Greetings, everyone. Chris Hislop from the Montana World Affairs Council, and this is another edition of What, So What, Now What, where we connect you with an expert on the issue of the day, and in just a few minutes, you become the expert. Today, we're joined once again by Mychailo Wynnyckyj, who's an associate professor at the Kyiv-Moylha Academy and a higher education consultant. He can be seen on a number of international news outlets providing his expert analysis on the situation in Ukraine. Mychailo joins us live from Kyiv. Mychailo, nice to see you again and welcome back to the show. How are you?
Thank you very much for having me.
Mychailo, I wonder if you could update our viewers on the situation in Ukraine now.
Well, we've had a very rapid advance of the Ukrainian armed forces, I think everybody knows, into Kharkiv Oblast. This has resulted in approximately 3,000 square kilometers being liberated, which is a fantastic amount of land and a fantastic amount of territory. I think many of us were expecting an advance to the south towards Kherson. That ended up being a bit of a diversionary tactic, which was, I think, very, very interesting because the Russian forces moved to defend the southern areas. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian forces moved eastward. I think it's important to understand that the forces that were actually involved in liberating the east were actually territorial defense forces. In other words, these are volunteers that came to volunteer for service after February 24th. In other words, after the full invasion started. These are not necessarily regular army, and surprisingly enough, these are forces that don't have an awful lot of Western weapons yet. The Western weaponry, the HIMARS and others, and other weapons have been primarily concentrated on the southern front rather than the east. In other words, this is a truly Ukrainian victory, something that we're very, very proud of.
Mychailo, does this mean a turning of the tides in the conflict between Ukraine and Russia?
I think it's way too soon to talk about that. We have a very large swath of Ukraine currently still under occupation. We have a very large partisan movement, particularly in the south at the moment. Ukraine has very clear objectives. We want to liberate all of our territory, and that includes both the Donbass and Crimea. And we understand full well that the liberation of Crimea is going to take a very long time because Russia has concentrated a huge amount of forces in that area. And it is actually probably unlikely that Crimea will be liberated in a military fashion. I think that we're going to be seeing some changes within Russia itself, if not perhaps the collapse of the Russian Empire. The Russian Federation, in fact, is an empire. So I think we're all sort of working towards that. But this is not going to be a very fast process. We're into this. This is going to be a long war. I don't think anyone in Ukraine is expecting, for example, really a completion by the end of the year. I think that we're going to be seeing hostilities well into 2023 and perhaps even longer than that.
Mychailo, for the American viewers who are watching you, can you help us understand why these current events matter to the United States?
Well, I think that they matter to the United States simply because at the end of the day, the United States proclaims certain values. Now, whether or not you actually live up to those values is really up to you. But at the end of the day, the value of freedom is something that is fundamental to these United States. It's something that you proclaim in your anthem. You proclaim in everything that you stand for. And Ukraine today is a country that is fighting for its freedom. This is fundamentally what this war is about. It is a war against an enemy that wants to destroy us and wants to make us into slaves. They've shown that in Bucha, they've shown that in Irpin, they've shown that in Mariupol. It is a question of Ukrainians can either live as free people or be destroyed. And in that particular scenario, it is obvious to be in Ukraine, in the United States' interest to support that, because if you don't support that, then frankly, I'm sorry for being perhaps a little bit too direct, but then what do you stand for?
Thanks for that, Mychailo. Now, looking ahead, what might we expect to happen in Ukraine in the coming weeks and months?
I think that we expect a very, very difficult winter. At the end of the day, the energy supplies to Ukraine are going to be very limited. We're talking about natural gas, we're talking about coal, Ukraine is currently an exporter of electricity, but as we know, the Zaporizhzhia power plant has effectively been shut down. It's the largest atomic energy source in Europe, and that causes problems. Although also the Russians are deliberately attacking Ukraine's energy infrastructure. So it's going to be a difficult winter. We're going to be continuing with hostilities. We're going to be continuing slow advances, probably with some pauses. But what I think is most important at the moment is that the tide in terms of the military situation has changed, meaning that Ukraine, up until 2 weeks ago, was defending itself. We are now on a counterattack. Now, we have a long way to go yet. We definitely need your support, military, political, economic, and otherwise. But we are all bracing for the fact that it's going to be a very, very difficult winter.
Mychailo, thank you so much for bringing us the real view from inside Ukraine. Once again, we sincerely appreciate that. Let me quickly thank our generous sponsors at the Dennis and Phyllis Washington Foundation, Allegiance and Stockman Bank, who help us bring this and many more programs to you. Mychailo, wishing you and your family well. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.